A woman in Ohio spent $4,000 on a professional landscape lighting install, wiring, transformers, an electrician on speed dial. 6 months later, her neighbor, using $9 solar stakes from a hardware bin bargain bin, had a garden that looked, at night, more expensive than hers. Same plants, same yard size, 1/10 the budget. The difference wasn't money, it was three placement decisions almost nobody gets right the first time, and most garden channels won't tell you what they are because just stick a solar light in the ground gets more clicks than the truth. Tonight, we're fixing that. In this video, I'm giving you 10 solar uplighting secrets that transform an ordinary backyard into something that looks like it belongs in a magazine, using nothing but affordable solar stake lights, most of them under $15 each. We're going deep. Placement geometry, color temperature, the battery types nobody tells you about, and the one panel trick that can genuinely double your light output for free. And I'll warn you now, number 7 is going to change the way you think about solar lighting forever. It's the one thing almost every solar light owner in America is doing backwards without knowing it. Let's get into it. 1. The placement mistake that makes solar lights look cheap. The single biggest reason solar lights look cheap isn't the light itself, it's that almost everyone points them straight up at the base of a plant like a spotlight aimed at a stage. That flattens everything. It looks like a parking lot, not a garden. Professional lighting designers use what's called grazing light instead, placing the stake 6 to 12 inches away from the trunk or stem, angled at roughly a 30 to 45 degree slant, so the light skims across the bark or foliage rather than blasting it head-on. This catches texture, bark ridges, leaf edges, the rough surface of stone. That texture is what your eye reads as expensive at night, because texture is exactly what disappears under flat, direct light. The surprising fact most people don't know, this technique costs you nothing extra. It's not about buying a better light, it's about moving the exact same $9 stake a few inches and tilting it. That's the whole secret. But placement angle only matters if you've picked the right color of light to begin with, and that's a mistake even bigger than angle. Let's talk about it. 2. The color temperature trap. Solar lights are sold in a range of color temperatures, measured in Kelvin, and most budget multi-packs default to cool white, somewhere around 5,000 to 6,500 K. That's the same harsh blue-white light you'd find in a hospital hallway or a gas station canopy. In a garden at night, it makes everything look sterile and artificial, almost security light in feel. What professional landscapers reach for is warm white, typically in the 2,700 to 3,000 K range. This mimics candlelight and old-fashioned incandescent bulbs, and it's the temperature that makes green foliage read as rich and alive, rather than washed out, and makes stone or mulch look warm instead of clinical. Here's the part almost nobody realizes. Most retailers don't put the Kelvin number on the front of the package. It's buried in small print on the back or in the online listing specs. If a pack just says bright white or daylight with no Kelvin number listed prominently, it's very likely a cool-toned light in the 5,000 K plus range, the one you don't want for garden ambiance. Once you've got the right color, there's a specific spacing pattern designers use that turns a random scatter of lights into a composed scene, and it's called the Rule of 3 landscapers swear by. Amateur setups tend to space lights evenly, like fence posts, one every 3 feet in a straight line. It's functional, but it reads as mechanical, and mechanical is the opposite of what makes a garden feel alive at night. Professionals instead group lights in uneven clusters of 3, one tall focal point, a small tree, an ornamental grass clump, a trellis, flanked by 2 shorter accent points at varying distances, never symmetrical. This mimics how light naturally falls in a landscape, with a hierarchy of brightness rather than a uniform grid. The eye is drawn first to the tallest, brightest point, then wanders to the secondary points, which is exactly how you create depth in a photograph or a painting. The surprising fact, this triangle grouping principle comes directly from stage and film lighting design, where it's sometimes called the hero, fill, kicker arrangement. One dominant light, one supporting light, one small accent. Garden designers just adapted it for landscapes. Once you understand grouping, the next question is what you're actually lighting, because trees and shrubs need completely different techniques, and mixing them up is where a lot of setups go wrong. Quick pause here. Think about your own backyard right now. Is there one tree, one shrub, or one architectural feature that if it were lit up at night would completely change how your whole yard feels when you're sitting outside after dark? Hold that image in your mind, because we're about to show you exactly how to light it. And if you're the kind of gardener who actually wants your yard to look intentional after sunset, not just there are some lights out there, subscribing genuinely helps, because this channel exists specifically for gardeners who care about the details other channels skip. It costs nothing and takes 2 seconds. 4. Trees versus shrubs. Two completely different techniques. Trees and shrubs are almost never lit the same, but most beginner setups treat every plant identically, and that's a mistake that flattens the whole design. For trees, the technique is called uplighting from a single point close to the trunk, aimed up through the canopy. Because a tree has height and layered branches, one well-placed light at the base, angled to skim up the trunk into the lower branches, creates dramatic shadow play as the light filters through leaves. This is especially striking with trees that have interesting bark texture, like birch or crepe myrtle, or an open branching structure like Japanese maples. Shrubs, by contrast, are wide and low, so a single point light close to the base tends to just blow out the nearest leaves and leave the rest dark. Instead, shrubs respond better to two lights placed at wider angles from each other, sometimes called cross-lighting, so the light wraps around the form rather than hitting it from one direction. This is what gives a rounded shrub its three-dimensional shape at night, instead of looking like a flat cutout. The fact most people miss is using tree technique on a shrub is the single most common reason solar-lit shrubs look like a floodlit bush instead of a design feature. It's a technique mismatch, not a bad plant choice or a bad light. Now, once your placement and plant matching are right, there's a myth about brightness that trips up almost everyone shopping for these lights, and it's costing people money for no reason. 5. The lumens myth that's wasting your money. Walk into any hardware store and you'll see solar lights advertised by lumens, 50 lumens, 100 lumens, some claiming 300 plus. The instinct is to assume brighter is automatically better, so people buy the highest lumen count they can afford. But in landscape lighting, brightness without contrast actually destroys the effect you're going for. A garden at night isn't supposed to look like daytime, it's supposed to look like moonlight with intentional highlights. When every fixture is blasting maximum lumens, you lose the shadow and depth that make nighttime lighting feel atmospheric, and you also draw attention to the fixture itself glowing in the dark, rather than the plant it's illuminating. Lighting designers generally aim for a range around 20 to 40 lumens for accent and grazing light, reserving higher lumen fixtures only for true focal points, maybe 1 or 2 per yard, not 10. It's about contrast between bright and dim areas, not uniform brightness everywhere. The surprising fact, many of the priciest, ultra-bright solar lights on the market are actually worse for this style of garden design than the cheaper mid-range options, because their light output is too strong to allow for the shadow and depth that make a nighttime garden look designed, rather than just lit up. Getting the brightness right sets up our next trick perfectly, because there's a way to make the fixture itself completely disappear, so all you see is the light effect and none of the hardware. 6. Making the fixture disappear. Even a well-placed, well-colored solar light can ruin the illusion if you can actually see the little plastic stake sticking out of the mulch. In daylight, it's invisible under foliage, but at night, the stake and housing can catch ambient light or simply stick out as an obvious man-made object breaking the natural scene. The fix professional installers use is tucking the fixture slightly behind or beneath the plant material it's lighting, nestled just behind a low ground cover, a small rock, or a mulch mound, so only the light beam is visible, not the housing. You angle it up and out from that hidden position rather than placing it in the open in front of the plant. This does two things. It hides the hardware, and it also means the light source itself isn't directly in your line of sight when you're sitting on the porch or a patio, which reduces glare and makes the whole scene feel softer and more natural, closer to genuine moonlight filtering through a garden. The fact almost nobody considers, glare, light shining directly into your eyes, is one of the top reasons people feel like their nice landscape lighting still looks amateur, even when everything else about the setup is done right. Hiding the source solves that glare problem automatically.
Second pause. I want you to think honestly. When's the last time you actually sat outside in your own backyard after dark just to enjoy it, rather than rushing through it to get inside? For a lot of people, the honest answer is not in years, because the yard just isn't inviting after sunset. That's genuinely the whole reason this video exists. If that resonated with you even a little, subscribing means you won't miss the follow-up videos where we walk through full before and after transformations start to finish. And this channel really does grow from people like you sticking around, so it means a lot. Thank you if you already have. Also, drop a comment below and tell me what city or country you're gardening in. I'm genuinely curious how many countries are watching this, and I read every single comment. 7. The solar panel angle trick that changes everything. Here it is, the one I promised would change how you think about solar lighting forever. Almost everyone installs solar stake lights with the panel facing straight up, flat and level, because that's how they come out of the package and it feels intuitive. Up means toward the sun, right? But depending on your latitude and the season, the sun's path across the sky is rarely directly overhead. In most of the continental United States, the sun sits at a lower angle in the sky for a large portion of the year, especially fall through early spring. Because of this, angling the solar panel slightly toward true south, tilted at roughly an angle close to your local latitude, can dramatically increase how much direct sunlight the panel actually captures over the course of a day, compared to leaving it flat. Landscape lighting professionals and solar installers have used this latitude tilt principle for years on larger solar arrays, but almost nobody applies it to garden stake lights, even though the same physics apply at any scale. The surprising, almost unbelievable fact, simply re-angling an existing solar panel, no new purchase, no new equipment, just a tilt, can be the difference between a light that dies by 11 p.m. and one that stays lit all night long. People assume a weak solar light needs to be replaced, when often it just needs to be pointed correctly. Once your lights are actually charging properly, the next question becomes what's happening inside them, because not all solar batteries are created equal, and this is where a lot of people get quietly scammed. 8. The battery secret hiding inside cheap solar lights. Almost every solar stake light contains a rechargeable battery, but the type of battery varies enormously between products, and manufacturers rarely make this obvious on the packaging. Many budget lights use Ni-match batteries, nickel metal hydride, which are inexpensive but degrade relatively quickly, often losing significant charge capacity within a year or two of daily outdoor use, especially in hot climates where heat accelerates battery wear. Better quality solar lights use lithium-ion batteries instead, which hold charge more efficiently, tolerate temperature swings better, and generally last several years longer before needing replacement. The catch is that the battery type is almost never printed clearly on the front packaging. You often have to check the product description online or open the battery compartment on a light you already own to find out which one you have. A quick trick, Ni-match batteries are almost always the round, AA-style cylindrical batteries, while lithium-ion batteries in solar garden lights are more often flat, rectangular, or pouch-shaped inside the housing. The fact worth knowing, many replacement batteries are sold cheaply online, meaning a solar light that seems dead after a couple of years often just needs an $8 battery swap rather than a full fixture replacement, but only if you know which battery type to buy. With your hardware sorted, there's one more creative technique that separates a good nighttime garden from a genuinely striking one, and it flips everything we've talked about so far. 9. Silhouetting, the reverse technique nobody tries. Everything so far has been about uplighting a plant directly, but there's a second technique called silhouetting that does the opposite, and it's dramatically underused by home gardeners, even though it's a favorite trick among professional night photographers and landscape designers. Instead of placing the light in front of a plant to illuminate it, you place the light behind the plant, aimed at a flat surface behind it, a fence, a wall, a hedge, so the plant itself is thrown into dark silhouette against a glowing background. This works especially well with plants that have distinctive graphic shapes, ornamental grasses with feathery seed heads, palms, yuccas, or anything with a strong outline. This technique creates a completely different mood from uplighting, more dramatic, more architectural, almost theatrical, and it's particularly effective for a single specimen plant that has a striking silhouette but maybe unremarkable color or texture up close. The surprising, almost unbelievable fact, simply re-angling an existing solar panel, no new purchase, no new equipment, just a tilt, can be the difference between a light that dies by 11 p.m. and one that stays lit all night long. People assume a weak solar light needs to be replaced, when often it just needs to be pointed correctly. And that brings us to the very last piece, because even the best designed nighttime garden falls apart if you don't maintain it properly through the seasons, and this is where most people quietly let it fade. 10. The seasonal maintenance nobody talks about. Solar lights are marketed as set it and forget it, but that's misleading. Solar panels accumulate a thin film of dust, pollen, and grime over weeks, and even a light haze can reduce charging efficiency by a meaningful percentage, often without you noticing, because the drop-off is gradual rather than sudden. Wiping down each panel with a soft, damp cloth roughly once a month during pollen-heavy spring months, and once every couple of months otherwise, keeps charging efficiency close to what it was on day one. It's also worth checking that surrounding foliage hasn't grown up and started shading the panel. Plants grow throughout the season, and a panel that had full sun exposure in April can be half-shaded by an expanding shrub by August without anyone realizing why the lights got dimmer. In colder climates, it's also worth knowing that most consumer solar lights aren't rated for deep freezes, and battery performance drops noticeably in cold weather, regardless of battery type, so a light that seems weaker in January than it was in July isn't necessarily broken, it's just cold. The fact that ties this whole list together, a nighttime garden isn't a purchase, it's a small living system, sunlight in, light out, and like anything living in a garden, it needs occasional minimal attention to keep performing the way it did on day one. Here's the pattern running underneath every single one of these 10 items. None of them were about spending more money. Every single upgrade, the angle, the color temperature, the grouping, the hidden fixture, the panel tilt, the battery knowledge, the silhouette trick, the maintenance, was about understanding the light better, not buying a better light. That Ohio homeowner's $4,000 install and her neighbor's $9 stake lights were never really about budget, they were about knowledge. The neighbor simply understood light the way a photographer or a stage designer understands it, as something you shape and direct with intention, not just switch on. And now you understand it too. Your garden already has everything it needs to look incredible after dark. It's just been waiting for someone to point the light the right way. If this changed how you're going to look at your own backyard tonight, the next video in this series walks through a full real backyard, start to finish, using everything from this list, including a couple of $5 dollar store finds that outperformed lights 3 times the price. You're going to want to see it. One more time, if you're not subscribed yet, this is exactly the kind of budget-first, no-fluff gardening content this channel is built around, and subscribing means you catch the next one the moment it goes live instead of hoping the algorithm shows it to you. And before you go, tell me in the comments which of these 10 items surprised you the most. I really do read every comment, and I love seeing which ones land differently for different gardens. Thanks so much for spending this time with me tonight. Now go turn some lights on out there, and I'll see you in the next one.